Hello there, Lunar Squadron, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to have a discussion on a Marvel Spider-Man 2 topic that has honestly been on our minds for quite some time. Now, if you joined us a few days ago, we released a video where we broke down who could possibly be Venom in the upcoming Spider-Man 2, and today we're going to be taking that discussion to the next level, and we're going to be talking about and theorizing who is the real villain of Marvel Spider-Man 2, because there are a bunch of candidates, there are a bunch of villains that we know for sure are going to show up in this game, and there might even be some villains waiting in the wings, waiting in the shadows that are not so obvious at the moment. We're going to have all of these conversations in this video, but before we do that, if you're new to the channel, we would love to have you as always, and the way to do that is just go down below this video, hit that little subscribe button, the bell notification right on next to it. It will notify you every single time Andreas and I upload the latest and greatest Spider-Man, Star Wars, all of the stuff that we know and love, all of that content, it will notify you of that. Also, you should consider joining our Discord server. There will be a link to join that down below in the description. It's a great place for you guys to get to know us, great place for us to get to know you better. We have so many fun conversations, so many different types of conversations and topics discussed in there. We just have a great time. So you should definitely consider joining that link, again, down below in the description. Now, with all of this out of the way, Andreas, let's figure out, or let's talk about who the real villain in Spider-Man 2 is.
Let's do it, guys. As with any Spider-Man story, we know that there are going to be a ton of great villains, but the central question right now is, who's the big bad of this Spider-Man story? Who is going to be the ultimate main villain, the end boss, the big fight at the end that we're going to look forward to? Who is the big bad of Marvel's Spider-Man 2? Now, I know that there are three main candidates for that right now. We know for a fact that there are going to be three villains in this game. We know that Kraven is in the game. We know that Venom's in the game. And we also know that Dr. Kirk Connors himself, the Lizard, is going to be in this game. But we also know from Brian Intahar's presentation at the Summer Games Fest that there are going to, for sure, be more villains in this game. So is the big bad of this game going to be one of those main three? Or, Nick, do we think it's going to be someone out of left field? Maybe one of these, iPad villains that have been circulating? What's your gut feeling on this?
Yeah, so like you said, the three obvious candidates here are Venom, Lizard, Kraven. Those are the three that we know for sure. They're the three that we've seen in gameplay, but I think the reason we're even having this conversation in the first place is that Insomniac likes to pull twists. They like to change up what's actually going on. Pull one over on you, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Is think back to the first game, Spider-Man 1. We all thought Mr. Negative was going to be the big bad based off of the trailers, based off of the gameplay, everything we had seen. Turns out he was just a puppet for Doc Ock's larger operation in the end. So it turns out that Doc Ock was actually the one pulling the strings the entire time. And then you think to Miles Morales, where it turns out that his best friend is the one who's actually the main bad guy. A total twist in the story. They just really love their plot twists over there at Insomniac, especially with their Marvel Spider-Man series. So that is really the main reason we're even having this conversation in the first place, because we have three great candidates in Kraven, Lizard, and Venom, but I'm just not convinced that one of them is going to be the main bad of this game. It still feels like there is someone larger than them behind the scenes actually pulling the strings. Now, before we get into possibly who that could be, I want to talk about, out of the three candidates that we do know who are going to be in this game, that being Venom, Lizard, and Kraven, again, I think it is the responsible thing for us to do to consider that if one of them is the main bad of this game, who could it possibly be? Now, if you joined us for our Venom conversation a few days ago, where we were kind of discussing who could possibly be Venom, who could be that endgame Venom, I mentioned that I didn't believe that Venom was going to be one of the endgame villains for this game. It just doesn't feel like that's what's going to happen. It feels like he's more of the early game stage bad guy, I guess you could say, for this game, just because the symbiote has to go from him or from Harry to Peter, and then is it going to get to somebody else is the big question, and that is kind of where we're not sure on things. So it doesn't feel like he is going to be the endgame villain. For me personally, out of those three, I feel like Kraven has the biggest potential to be the main bad guy of the game if you had to pick one of the three that we obviously know are going to be in it.
Yeah, I think if we're looking between those three, I just think that based off of what we know about Venom and how he's going to play into this game, that the symbiote is going to start off with Harry and then it's going to migrate its way to Peter. I do get that feeling that since we know Venom, or at least the symbiote, is going to play a role in the early stage of this game, that Venom will kind of blossom in the early stages. And I agree with you about Kraven as well. Kraven seems like the most likely candidate, but you just get that feeling, don't you, that like there's someone pulling the strings in the background, like that Insomniac is going to pull one over us again. And I don't know about you, Nick, but I kind of have two main candidates that I think could be that solution, and I'm kind of curious to see if you know where I'm going here. But then there's also a few out of left field that I might want to touch on just briefly, just to hear people's thoughts in the comments. But Nick, if you could have like two bites at the apple here, like two big guesses of who could be the big bad lurking in the shadows, pulling the strings that's gonna emerge at the end of this game, who are you taking?
Yeah, so I would like to touch on one thing just before we jump into that. There was some news that came out about Venom, some clarification. I just want to throw this in here since we didn't get to throw it into our Venom video and we're talking about him in this video, is that I believe Insomniac confirmed a few days ago that this game does take place roughly 10 months after the events of Miles Morales, I believe is what was said. If I'm wrong about that, let me know down below in the comments, clarify that for us, but I believe that is what was said. So I guess there is the potential there, like if there is that 10-month gap between that post-credit scene where Harry has the symbiote and the events of this game, very reasonable that you could see the symbiote change hands with someone else being Venom and then it getting on to Peter. But that is an entirely different conversation. Just wanted to throw that in there very quickly since we didn't get to in our Venom video. But getting back to what you asked, I picking up exactly what you're putting down about who could possibly be the two big bads, who's big enough in this universe, who's established from these games to be the person behind the scenes pulling the strings. Now, of course, Doc Ock did it in Spider-Man 1. He's in prison right now. I don't think he has any potential to be one of those two. I think Peter might have some sort of relationship with him in this game, but it won't be with him being the main bad. To me, it is either Norman Osborn or it is Wilson Fisk, Kingpin himself, or the two candidates there, if there is truly someone behind the scenes pulling his strings just like there was in Spider-Man, if there is a bigger bad just like there was in the first game.
Yeah, I think those really are the two big picks that you could go to. Let's kind of take them one at a time. First off, Norman Osborn. Seems like he's been the big bad, like that's like, it's been a long time coming, just given the post-credit scenes from the last two games. It just feels like Norman Osborn is really going to play into this story. They're grooming him to step into that Green Goblin role. But on the flip side of the coin, Nick, is Green Goblin a little overdone when it comes to Spider-Man? I know it's like Batman's Joker, but has it been a little overdone, and is it at the point where people are almost going to eye roll at the end, like, oh, it's another Green Goblin story? Or do you think, just knowing Insomniac, knowing that they like to put their original flavor and their original spin on villains, do you think that it will be like this oh shit moment, total payoff, what a move, what a maneuver from Insomniac? Like, how are you feeling about this one?
I don't think Green Goblin has been overdone at all, to be honest with you. And in fact, I think Insomniac has been setting him up as the true endgame to their franchise this entire time. They've been laying the seeds the entire time that eventually we're going to see Norman Osborn as Green Goblin. And I would not be surprised if that is what happens near the latter stages of this second game going into the third game. Because I always felt like they were going to save Green Goblin for like a potential third game. To me, this just felt like this series was going to be like a trilogy of some sorts for some reason. And I just always felt like they were going to save Spider-Man's arguably biggest villain for that final game. And I think there is a good chance he gets introduced into Marvel's Spider-Man 2. And I honestly believe, I'm not going off of any like concrete evidence here, this is just my gut feeling, I feel like there is a huge chance here that Norman Osborn turns out to be the one behind the scenes eventually pulling the strings and turns out to be the Green Goblin in the end. I really think that is a likely scenario for this game, and I would be a little surprised if he doesn't make an appearance in this game. If Norman doesn't start to have that fall into the Goblin, that would honestly kind of shock me if that doesn't show up at all in this game.
I really like that point, Nick. I think just the way that I'm kind of reading this situation, I really do agree that I think Norman Osborn is going to grow into that Green Goblin role, whether it be like there will be something that triggers that. I think it's likely that, maybe Harry's health, takes a turn for the worse and he really does die in this game. And then Norman kind of goes out of control. But I am wondering, is it Insomniac's move to get that into motion in this game, but then leave him as the big bad for the next game? That kind of does seem like a potential solution to this problem. And it would lead on to the next question, which is, so then who does step in as the big bad if that does happen? And I think that's when we start to talk about Kingpin. That's where Kingpin really becomes that great second option, right?
Yeah, he truly does. And I will say with Norman and Green Goblin, it really does feel almost too obvious that maybe it is too obvious of a route for them to take, because Harry's dying or he has a terminal disease. Right now, they're using the symbiote to keep him alive. At some point, Harry is going to lose that symbiote. It's going to come into the possession of Peter Parker, Spider-Man. Perhaps Harry does end up dying because he says the only one that can save him is Dr. Connors, the lizard. Maybe Peter's not able to get to him in time or save him in time to save Harry. Norman then blames Spider-Man for the death of his son, therefore has that fall from grace into Green Goblin. That would be one avenue they could choose to pursue, to have him turn into Green Goblin. It would be kind of not a completely fresh original take, but it would be a more interesting way to have Norman fall into the Green Goblin persona. And then there you have it. Arch enemy is Spider-Man. It just seems such an obvious pathway for Norman in this game, but maybe it's too obvious, and maybe there is this other big bad. And for me, the other option here is, just given what we know about the nature of the character and other Marvel projects, what we've seen him done as a character before, is Kingpin himself. We know he's in the first game. He plays a smaller role than probably expected when I first saw him in this game, but he is the perfect type of character to be the one behind the scenes pulling the strings. I just keep thinking about his character role in the Daredevil series, about how it was really Kingpin behind the scenes pulling all the strings for everything going on. And I could see something similar happening here in Marvel's Spider-Man 2. I'm just not so confident in this one because they seem to be giving Kingpin a lesser role in this game series, in this universe that they're developing, that I just don't think they're going to go back to him as the big bad in this game. But I think out of the characters left that we haven't discussed and that we don't know their fates exactly, I think Kingpin is a good option, at least one worth talking about.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more there. I do think that he is naturally that pulling the strings in the background character that you would almost expect to be behind the events of this game. Now, to kind of talk about maybe some left field picks, Nick, do you have any left field picks that you just like to throw out there just to get on record, just so you can say, aha, I called it?
To be honest with you, I really don't see the potential for some massive out of left field picks. Doc Ock is taken care of. I mean, Scorpion exists and Vulture exists, but I just don't think they're big enough characters to be the main bad guys of this game. I think maybe it's just me personally, and it's just the way I feel. I think there are clear tiers when it comes to the villains that Spider-Man has, and how big they are able to go and how much influence they are able to have in the universe. I'm not going to sit here and say oh, Mysterio is the big bad of this game. He's going to make an appearance finally, and he's going to be the big bad. I just don't see villains like Mysterio or Scorpion or Vulture being big enough to do it. To me, the big villains that could be the ones behind the scenes pulling the strings are the ones like Doc Ock, which already happened. Green Goblin seems like a great candidate for this game for that to be the case if that does happen. Or someone like Kingpin, who has that city-wide influence, who would be able to, in terms of the canon, in terms of in the universe, pull off something big like this. So those to me seem like the likely candidates. I don't see any out of left field picks, especially since we're dealing with 3 confirmed villains who could on their own be the endgame villains in Kraven, Lizard, and Venom. So for me personally, I don't see any out of left field picks. I know like Prowler's going to be in this game. To me, not a big enough villain. Tombstone, nowhere near big enough to be the main bad. Like, there's just aren't that many big names left besides the ones we've discussed that I could see it being them. Outside of you want to go start talking into outside of main Spider-Man villains and you want to talk about overall Marvel villains, but then you just open up a whole can of worms there, like to the outside part of the universe, Marvel universe, and then you're going to have to go explain that. And I just don't think Insomniac's ready to do that yet. So I think out of the ones we've discussed, we've kind of covered what at least I'm expecting to be the likely candidates for this role, if this role exists.
Well, there you have it, guys. Those are, the key expected candidates for the big bad in this game. Let us know in the comments down below, do you think it's going to be one of the 3 candidates that we know about, or do you think it's going to be, one of these 2 more novel ideas, being the Green Goblin or Kingpin, or do you think that there's some wild left field pick? Do you think like Tombstone's gonna be the big bad of this one or something crazy? Like, do you think the Chameleon or something? I mean, we know that he's Kraven the Hunter's half brother, so he could tie into this story somehow. But let us know in the comments down below. We'd love to hear all of your thoughts. It's been great to read through the comments, especially on our previous Venom video, just to see what everybody's thinking in there. So would love to see what all of you have to say about this one. However, that's going to do it for this discussion. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, we will see you all next time.